A man confessed to taking a 9-year-old girl, survived a criminal trial, and carried the location of her final resting place out of a prison gate. Today he walks the streets of an American city in total silence. She remains lost. Most people think this case was never solved. It was. There was a confession, there was a conviction, there is a man alive right now who knows exactly where she is, and he has chosen, every single day for 26 years, to say nothing. This case didn't just destroy one family. It proved that a killer can serve his time, walk free, and take the truth with him, legally, completely, forever. And it left one question that no courtroom, no search team, and no technology has ever been able to close. Where is Erica Baker? Kettering, Ohio, a suburb of Dayton so ordinary it barely shows up on a map. February 7, 1999, Sunday. The temperature that day was unusually warm for early February, a light rain in the air. The kind of quiet afternoon where parents across that neighborhood didn't think twice about letting their kids step outside. Erica Nicole Baker was 9 years old, blonde hair, hazel eyes, a smile with slightly crooked front teeth that her teachers at Indian Riffle Elementary never forgot. The school supervisor put it on record, the friendliest child in the world, a girl who would never pass you in the hallway without waving hello. That morning she was with her father, Greg. They were supposed to go to a father-daughter dance that night, but Greg had forgotten to buy the tickets. The waiting list yielded nothing. Erica was deeply hurt, but kids bounced back quickly. Around 3 p.m., he dropped her off at the home she shared with her mother, Misty, and grandmother, Pam. Back at the house, Erica helped her aunt take down a waterbed. Then she walked over to visit her friend Sarah. Sarah wasn't home. She came back. She had nothing to do and nowhere to be, and the kind of restless energy that only a 9-year-old on a Sunday afternoon can have. She asked Misty if she could take Jamie for a walk. Jamie was the family's little Shih Tzu. Misty said no. It was raining. She didn't want Erica catching a cold. Erica begged. The way only a 9-year-old can beg. Persistent, relentless, wearing you down with love until you don't have anything left to say no with. And Misty, like any parent in that moment, gave in. Erica pulled on her pink raincoat over her Winnie the Pooh sweatshirt. She clipped Jamie's blue leash. She went out the back door. That is the last image Misty Baker has of her daughter. Indian Riffle Park sits right next to the Kettering Recreation Center. It was a short walk from the house, a route Erica knew by heart. Around 4 p.m., a couple was walking their own dog through the park. They noticed a little girl sitting on a bench near the pond. Pink raincoat, small dog at her feet. Nothing about the scene alarmed them. They walked on. Less than an hour later, they came back through. The bench was empty. The little girl was gone. But the dog was still there. Jamie, alone, soaking wet, dragging a blue leash through the wet grass, found shivering near the doorway of the middle school next to the park. The couple looked for the girl they had seen. They called out. They searched the area. There was no one. Back at the house, time kept passing, and Erica kept not coming home. Misty sent her sons, Erica's older brothers, out to look for her. They found nothing. Misty already knew. Her daughter had never stayed out past dark. Not once in her life. Whatever this was, it was not a child who lost track of time. Misty Baker was so hysterical that she could not dial the phone. It was grandmother Pam who made the 911 call. By 8:10 p.m. an officer was dispatched to the home. By midnight, crews were draining a 9 million gallon retention pond at the Kettering Recreation Center. By 1 a.m., a helicopter was cutting through the dark sky above the neighborhood. By morning, hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement officers were flooding the streets of Kettering. Jamie came home. Erica didn't. The image that would define this case for the next 26 years wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a crime scene. It was a wet dog on a blue leash, alone near a school doorway on a rainy Sunday afternoon, and the girl on the other end of that leash simply gone. Search teams swept the park. They swept the recreation center, the golf course, every path she could have taken. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a fiber, not a single physical trace of where Erica Baker went after that bench. The park gave up no answers. But 5 months later, a name surfaced. A man who had been in that exact neighborhood on that exact afternoon, and the first words he said to police would stop detectives cold in a way they had never experienced before. 5 months passed, and Erica Baker was nowhere. The hotline set up by Kettering police rang constantly. Hundreds of calls, hundreds of tips, every single one of them leading to nothing. 2 weeks after Erica disappeared, her parents sat across from Oprah Winfrey on national television and begged anyone watching to come forward. The case ran on every local channel. Her face was on posters across Dayton, across Ohio, across the country, and still not one physical clue, not one credible lead, not one answer. Then, in June of 1999, a man sitting in an Ohio prison cell turned on his television. America's Most Wanted was running a segment on a missing girl from Kettering, a 9-year-old in a pink raincoat. The man watched, and something moved inside him. Not guilt, not conscience exactly. Something closer to calculation. His name was Clifford Butts. He picked up the phone and called authorities. What he told them did not just add a new lead to the case, it rebuilt the entire map of February 7, 1999 from scratch. Clifford described that Sunday in specific detail, him and his girlfriend Sabrina, their friends Christian Gabriel and Gabriel's girlfriend Jan Franks, 4 people, 1 van, an old utility van that had broken down that afternoon in the parking lot of a Meijer grocery store roughly 1 mile from the park where Erica Baker had been walking her dog. They got the van running just enough to move it. Then they went inside the store, not to shop, to steal merchandise they could sell fast for cash to fund their illicit habits. After the shoplifting, Clifford and Sabrina split off and went back to Gabriel's apartment. They waited. Later that evening, Jan Franks came through the door and told Clifford to go back downstairs to the van. Gabriel was waiting outside in the dark, and sitting there in that van, Gabriel told Clifford what had happened earlier that afternoon with a little girl. Clifford didn't go to police in 1999. He went to prison instead, for something unrelated. It took a television show and 4 months of sitting in a cell before he said a word. But what he said sent detectives straight to the Meijer store surveillance footage. Gabriel's van was there, photographed in that parking lot that afternoon within that window of time, his van, 1 mile from the park. On the same day, investigators had suspected a vehicle was involved from the beginning, and now they had a specific van, a specific man, and a witness, placing them both at a location 1 mile from where Erica was last seen alive. On July 14, 1999, detectives Driscoll and Renner drove 40 miles east of Kettering to an apartment near Jeffersonville, Ohio. They knocked. Christian Gabriel opened the door and let them in. They told him they were investigating the disappearance of Erica Baker. They asked him where he was on February 7. He confirmed it easily, admitting he was at the Meijer store that afternoon to shoplift. Then they asked the real question. Did anything happen that day? Anything at all involving a missing girl? Christian Gabriel looked at the 2 detectives sitting in his apartment and said, "Something could have happened." That was his complete answer. Not a denial, not a confession, just 4 words that left a void where an innocent man would have said no. One detective would later say, those words never left him, because in all his years on the force, he had never heard an innocent person respond to a question about a missing 9-year-old girl that way. Gabriel then mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that he no longer had the van. He had sold it to a man named Kevin Smith just weeks after February 7. Detectives tracked Smith down. The van was impounded and transferred to the Miami Valley Regional Crime Laboratory. Forensic technicians went over every surface, every fiber, every corner of that vehicle. No DNA, no trace of Erica Baker, nothing. Without physical evidence, they could not hold him. Gabriel was free to go, but before he walked out, investigators asked him to take a polygraph test. Gabriel agreed. He sat down. The examiner asked him direct, specific questions. Did he know what had happened to Erica Baker? Did he have anything to do with her disappearance? The needle moved on every relevant question. Christian Gabriel failed the polygraph completely. Polygraph results are not admissible in a court of law in Ohio. They cannot be shown to a jury. Gabriel walked out the door, a free man. And then he went silent. 5 years of silence. A family with no answers. A detective who read the case file so many times the pages wore thin. And a man living his life 40 miles away, saying nothing, doing nothing, giving no one anything to work with. Then in 2004, Gabriel made the kind of mistake only a man with a habit he cannot control makes. He got arrested. And standing outside a sheriff's office with a cigarette burning between his fingers, something inside him finally cracked open. But what came out of his mouth next would raise more questions than it answered. The pressure started in early 2004. Kettering detectives had never stopped watching Christian Gabriel. When they turned up the heat, re-interviewing his friends, his family, his new girlfriend, something in him began to fracture. He went back to crack cocaine, and when the money ran out, he went back to stealing. From stores, from strangers, then from the people closest to him, his uncle's tools, his own son's toys, a 2-year-old boy's belongings pawned for drug money. Clark County Sheriff's Office arrested him for receiving stolen property. It wasn't a dramatic bust. It was the predictable, ugly end of a man who had been running from something for 5 years. Outside the sheriff's office, before he even stepped through the door, Gabriel stood with a cigarette and 2 detectives at his side. And he started talking. He said he was there. He was in the van. He was involved in what happened to Erica Baker on February 7, 1999. They took him inside. The recorder started, and for the first time, Christian Gabriel gave a full account of that Sunday afternoon. He said Jan Franks was driving. Clifford and Sabrina were in the back. They left the Meijer store because they thought police had spotted them, so they drove down Glengarry Drive heading away from the area, and then they heard a thud. Everyone got out of the van. There was a little girl lying on the street. He claimed they panicked in the dark, lifting her into the vehicle before rushing away from the scene. They left the dog standing on the road. Then they drove back to his apartment, remaining under the heavy influence of illicit substances, while a helpless child remained outside in the vehicle. After that, Gabriel said, They drove approximately 10 miles north to Huffman Dam, a park area outside Dayton. He said he stayed in the van that night. He was sick, vomiting from the drugs and the alcohol. The others, he claimed, disappeared into the woods to conceal the evidence. They were gone about 30 minutes. They came back. Nobody ever went back to that location. The following day, detectives drove Gabriel to Huffman Dam. The audio recording from that trip still exists. On it, Gabriel is evasive from the moment they arrive. He calls the search a goose chase. He says he can't remember where they went into the woods. When a detective tells him quietly, "We just want to find that little girl," Gabriel's response is this: "I don't even want to validate your story. Not her story. Yours." As if Erica Baker's final moments are a narrative belonging to the detective, something that requires Gabriel's personal endorsement before it becomes real. They searched Huffman Dam. Dozens of officers. A thorough sweep of the woods, the ground, the brush. They found nothing, not a trace. Gabriel was brought back for more interviews over the following weeks. Each time the story shifted in small ways, a different detail here, a slightly different sequence there. He was testing the edges of what investigators could prove, giving just enough to seem cooperative but never enough to be charged with her death. For weeks, investigators felt they understood the shape of what happened: a tragic hit and run, a panic, a burial, a terrible accident. Then a detective asked Gabriel one direct question that rearranged everything. When the van struck Erica, was she already dead? Gabriel paused. And then he said it. She was not dead when he hit her. She was alive when they lifted her off that street and put her in the van. Alive when they drove back to his apartment. Alive at some point during those hours, while 4 adults sat inside and decided what to do next. The word accident no longer fits what happened after that moment. A child was alive, and the people around her made a choice. In a later prison interview, Gabriel got up mid-session and walked toward the restroom. He stopped. He turned back to Detective Bob Green. There were tears running down his face, and he asked, quietly, in a voice that carried the weight of 5 years of silence, "How much time would I get for tampering with evidence, the unlawful handling of human remains, and vehicular homicide?" Green told him he didn't know. Gabriel went to the restroom. He came back. He sat down. He asked the exact same question again. He knew. He had always known. Whatever happened to Erica Baker after that van hit her, Christian Gabriel knew every detail of it. But he never said it completely, never in a way that could put a murder charge in front of a jury. Gabriel's stories kept shifting, every version slightly different, every version just out of reach. Prosecutors knew they were running out of time, but they had something Gabriel didn't know about. A confession made 3 years earlier by a woman who was already dead. A secret so dangerous that the lawyer who held it chose a jail cell over giving it up. Gabriel's entire defense rested on one person. Jan Franks was driving. That was his story. He was just a passenger, sick, drunk, barely conscious in the seat beside her. Whatever happened to Erica Baker, Jan was behind the wheel when it did. And Jan was gone, succumbing to her ongoing battle with substance abuse in 2001. You cannot put a corpse on the witness stand. You cannot ask a dead woman to contradict a lie. It was a near-perfect shield, and Gabriel had been hiding behind it for months. But Detective Bob Green had been doing something quietly between interviews, not building a timeline, not re-examining the crime scene. He had been asking questions about Jan Franks that had nothing to do with Erica Baker at all. Simple questions, background questions, the kind that don't seem important until suddenly they are the only thing that matters. Jan-Marie Franks could not drive a standard shift vehicle. She had never learned. And Christian Gabriel's van, the exact van he claimed she was operating in the afternoon, a 9-year-old girl was struck on Glengarry Drive, was a standard shift. Green walked into the next interview and laid this in front of Gabriel without drama. No raised voice, no accusation, just the fact, placed on the table between them. The silence that followed was its own confession. And then Gabriel said it. He was driving. He had always been driving. Every story he had ever told about Jan behind the wheel, every carefully constructed sentence designed to transfer blame to a woman who could never speak again, was a lie, built entirely on the assumption that she was gone and he was the only one left to tell the story. But Jan Franks had not stayed completely silent. Before she died, she sat down with her attorney, a woman named Beth Lewis, and told her everything. What happened inside that van, what happened at the apartment, where they went afterward, what they did. A full confession, given to a lawyer, in private. Beth Lewis refused to say a word of it to anyone. Attorney-client privilege, she argued. The relationship between a lawyer and her client does not dissolve when the client dies. Lewis held that position all the way to a courtroom. She was held in contempt of court and sent to prison. She sat in that cell and said absolutely nothing. Eventually, Beth Lewis broke. She agreed to give her full testimony to a grand jury. She walked into that room and told them what Jan Franks had confessed. Every detail, everything John had carried to her grave and handed to her attorney instead. That testimony is permanently sealed. Grand jury proceedings in Ohio are confidential by law. What Jan Franks told Beth Lewis, what Lewis went to prison to protect, will never be made public, not to investigators, not to journalists, not to Greg and Misty Baker. Whatever Jan knew about what happened to their daughter now exists in a sealed document that no one outside that grand jury room will ever read. Then prosecutors found something else, something hiding in plain sight inside Gabriel's own written confession, the statement he put on paper on December 13, 2004. Gabriel described leaving the scene and driving south, away from Kettering, into the surrounding areas to the south. Huffman Dam is north of Kettering. It has always been north. Every time Gabriel pointed investigators toward Huffman Dam, every search, every walk through those woods, he was pointing them in the opposite direction from where he actually drove that night. Search teams had been looking entirely in the wrong direction. Prosecutors made their move in February 2005. The statute of limitations on the charges was expiring in 72 hours. They filed the indictment with 3 days to spare. The charges, tampering with evidence and gross abuse of a corpse. Not murder, not vehicular homicide, not aggravated assault. Because without Erica's body, prosecutors could not prove she was dead. The grand jury had the power to charge him with aggravated murder, and they declined. Clifford Butts was never charged. Sabrina was never charged. This, 2 counts, 6 years maximum, was the ceiling of what the law could reach without her remains. The trial lasted 1 week. 18 witnesses took the stand. Gabriel did not. His attorney told the jury every confession was coerced, that Gabriel had been pressured, manipulated, broken down by investigators who wanted a conviction more than they wanted the truth. But the jury heard Gabriel's own voice on the recordings, heard him describe the thud, the girl on the street, picking her up, driving away, and they heard him, in tears, in a prison interview room, ask a detective how much time he would get for vehicular homicide. They convicted him. The judge handed down the maximum sentence. 6 years. When the verdict was read, Gabriel erupted from his seat, cursing, screaming that he had been railroaded, that the system had failed him. He had to be physically dragged out of the courtroom by officers while Erica Baker's family sat and watched. 6 years, for a child whose family still did not know where she was. During the trial, members of Erica's family had taken the stand, not to present evidence, not to answer questions about the case. They stood in that courtroom and they begged, directly to Gabriel, in front of the judge and jury and everyone present, "Please, Mr. Gabriel, tell us where Erica is." He said nothing. On June 23, 2011, 1 day after what would have been Erica's 22nd birthday, Christian Gabriel walked out of prison, and the person waiting for him in the parking lot was the last person on earth anyone expected to be there. The gray SUV was already idling when Christian Gabriel walked out of Mercer County Jail on June 23, 2011. He got in the passenger seat, and when the Baker family found out who was behind the wheel, it stopped them cold. It was Pam Schmidt, Erica Baker's grandmother, the woman who had picked up the phone on the night of February 7, 1999, because her daughter Misty was too devastated to dial, and made the call that started everything. Pam had been writing to Gabriel throughout his 6 years in prison. Letter after letter, she had come to believe that the courtrooms and the detectives and the legal system had all failed to produce the one thing her family needed. So she tried something none of them could. She tried to reach him as a human being, a grandmother, someone whose grief had no agenda except one. She picked him up from jail. She sat with him. She spoke to him directly, without a recorder, without a badge, without anything except the weight of 12 years of not knowing where her granddaughter was. Gabriel told her he remembered nothing more, and then he walked away, into freedom, into silence, into a life that Erica Baker never got to have. 3 people have carried this case across 26 years, and not one of them has ever let it go. Bob Green was 4 months into his career as a detective when Erica went missing. 4 months. He had barely learned the job before the biggest case of his life landed on his desk. He worked it for nearly 2 decades before retiring in 2018. His successor, Sergeant Vincent Mason, carried the torch for another 12 years, digging over 1,000 holes across the region, tearing the basement out of a house in Dayton following a single tip. Mason had a daughter of his own. He said it plainly, "If you don't get emotionally involved in a case like this, you are not doing your job." Green, even in retirement, still consults. His words on Gabriel, "I worry myself more for returning Erica to a resting place for her family. Not catching the killer, returning the child." Then in October 2023, Detective Amy Pedro took charge of the Erica Baker case. She was 15 years old and in high school when Erica disappeared. Her father was a Kettering police officer. She remembers that Sunday, not as a case file, but as a day she lived through. 2 days after Amy Pedro officially became the lead detective on this investigation, Christian Gabriel was arrested in Oregon. October 3, 2023. Roseburg, Oregon, 2,400 miles from Kettering. Gabriel was charged with assault, cited for possession of a controlled substance, to which he pleaded no contest. The sentence handed down by a Douglas County court, 10 days in jail. A $500 fine. The man who knows where Erica Baker is buried served 10 days and paid $500. Detective Pedro did not look away. Her statement on Gabriel is precise and deliberate. He knows where she is, and he has chosen not to tell us. He has continued to make this family suffer because they haven't been able to bring their baby home to have her rest in peace. The searches have never stopped. December 2023. Multiple digs through 2024. January 2025. May 2025. Back near Huffman Dam, following new tips from people who knew Gabriel and finally decided to speak. Ground-penetrating radar scanning the soil. Drones mapping disturbances in the earth from the air. An excavator tearing open ground that has held its secret for 26 years. In 2022, during one of those searches, a bone was found after 20 minutes of digging. The team stopped. Word reached the Baker family. They held their breath and waited for the coroner's report. It was a dog bone, not human. In August 2025, the Kettering Police Department and Miami Valley Crime Stoppers announced a cash reward, open to anyone with information about Erica Baker. Anyone who knew Gabriel in 1999, anyone who knew him during his prison years, anyone who has spoken to him since. Police confirmed they know exactly where Gabriel is right now. They are watching him. And they believe with absolute certainty that finding Erica would produce the direct physical evidence needed to hold Gabriel legally accountable for her fate, which is precisely why he has never told anyone where she is. Her location is not just a secret, it is the only protection he has left. At David's Cemetery in Kettering, Ohio, there is a headstone. Greg Baker placed it there himself. His daughter's name is carved into it. Beneath it, there is nothing. The ground is undisturbed, an empty grave waiting for the day someone finally tells the truth. Greg Baker's words in 2025, "We have a place to put her at David's Cemetery, just to put an end to this page that has been ripped open out of our family life. We would be greatly appreciative if somebody could come forward." And the promise he made on February 7, 1999. The one he has carried every single day since. "I made a promise in the very beginning that I would not quit until we brought her home, to my last breath." Erica Nicole Baker was 9 years old. She would be 35 today. A man knows where she is. He is alive. He is in Oregon. And he has chosen every single day for 26 years to say nothing. If you have any information about this case, contact Detective Amy Pedro at the Kettering Police Department, and you may be eligible for a cash reward. Erica's family has waited long enough.